Hi, I'm Dr. Sean Going. I have a doctorate in acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and I help people with a wide variety of different concerns to address their holistic health and their personal needs. What I want to share with you in this video is some techniques that can help you reduce stress, potentially reduce physical pain, reduce anxiety, depression, really anything that we might consider a toxic emotion or a toxic experience. And by toxicity, in this case, what we mean is anything that's affecting you in an adverse way or an unpleasant way. So this can be great for, again, emotional issues that you might be dealing with. It can be fantastic actually for physical pain, for insomnia, for digestive disorders, all sorts of different things. It's simple, it's free, and it takes about 10 minutes to do. You can do it at home. You can do it sitting in your car in a parking lot. It's really easy. It's a style of, we could call it meditation or mindfulness training, and it does incorporate some deep breathing, and some different breathing techniques, although you can modify as needed. Obviously, this is not intended to diagnose or to treat any medical condition in lieu of medical care from your skilled professional provider. So obviously, if you have any concerns or questions, always seek the guidance of your own physician before you attempt anything, including this potentially, because there shouldn't be any side effects. But that being said, we always want to just practice caution. So that's the medical disclaimer. So a lot of people deal with stress on a daily basis. A lot of people deal with anxiety or depression or anger issues or grief or sadness. And the reality is that if we live a life, we're going to experience some varying degree of all of those types of things, as well as, unfortunately, most likely some sort of physical pain, at least on occasion. Obviously, that's never a goal, but it's just a reality of living. And there are many, many different challenges that we all might face throughout a even very healthy and very blessed life. And so what I wanted to do with this method, I call it the TeMPR Method. I wanted to design a methodology that takes about 10 minutes. So it's nice and quick, that there's a lot of evidence behind it. So it's based on a lot of different studies that I've read about, and I'm happy to share some of those with you. And I will after the method is explained a little bit, so you can understand the kind of logic behind this method, but that it can also be done easily, that it's really quick to learn, that you will, as with most practices, hopefully get more comfortable and maybe experience even more benefit the more that you do it and more with more time invested into it, but that it would give you a clear and noticeable improvement in the quality of life that you experience by just practicing it. And again, it takes about 10 minutes. So why do I call it the TeMPR Method? Well, TeMPR in this case stands for 10, that's the T and the E, minute pain reduction. But by pain, so that's TeMPR, 10-minute pain reduction method. But by pain in this case, again, we don't necessarily mean physical pain, although it's very helpful for a variety of different types of physical pain that you may experience. But it can be anything that's kind of a pain in your butt. That can be a toxic emotion. That can be just an unpleasant state of mind that you're in. It can be even just one of those days where you're feeling off and you're not quite sure why, because part of what this does is it helps you to become more mindful of what you're actually experiencing, not only in your mind, but also how that mental state of being might be manifesting in your body. And similarly, the things that you're experiencing in your body, this mindfulness practice should help you over time to understand better what the energy of that discomfort or that unpleasant experience that you're experiencing in a physical way is. So for physical or emotional concerns or problems that you're dealing with, this can be a very helpful technique. So it's really simple. It's about 3 minutes of a deep breathing exercise, followed by 4 minutes or so of a mindfulness practice, followed by another 3 minutes of a deep breathing exercise. And that together, obviously, if I did my math correctly, and if you're following along, is your 10 minutes total. So what we do first, and you can do if you have another deep breathing exercise that you're already comfortable with. I've actually spoken in one of my other videos about something called box breathing, where you do even pause and even length inhale and exhale. But in this case, what I recommend for people is to just try it out at least. It's a nice method to slow your breath down to about 3 breaths a minute. Studies clinically have shown us that when we reduce our rested breathing state by 50%, or by cut it in half of what it normally would be, which is about 14 breaths per minute or respirations per minute, When we cut that in half or greater, not only does the heart rate slow, but the mind starts to settle, and that there are some really wonderful benefits that we can experience, that actual neurotransmitters in the brain and some pleasure chemicals can actually start to find balance if they might have been imbalanced before. When the heart rate slows, different chemicals and hormones, including major stress hormones in your body, different inflammatory markers have actually been clinically shown through deep breathing exercises to reduce. So we're going to slow our breath to about 3 breaths a minute. And the way that I recommend people try to do this for a little while and see how it works for you is something that I call 6-4-10 breaths. So it's a 6-second exhale deep into the belly. You want to really think about filling the lungs by drawing the breath down into your abdomen. And this can actually just alone, this type of breathing can actually help reduce back pain and things like that by helping relax the psoas muscle potentially. So there's all sorts of other wonderful benefits that can come from this. So you do a 6-second inhale deep into the abdomen, really pulling that oxygen and hopefully that clean, healthy air around you into your lungs and filling those lungs. You don't puff the chest out as much as you draw and fill the abdomen. If you think of one of those old statues of a Buddha, right? You want to have that big Buddha belly there. Pretend your stomach has a balloon in it that you're just trying to fill up. So you do a 6-second inhale, followed by about a 4-second pause or a hold. You can concentrate on your navel or your belly button if that helps. So you're just pausing for a moment before you exhale. And you don't want to forcefully exhale, but just let the breath naturally fall out for about 10 seconds. So that's the 6-4-10. So if you have trouble reminding that, if you can just remember 6 and you're counting on your fingers and then you say 4, then you have to get rid of all that and you go back to 10 to reset. And then you're back to 6, 4, and 10. Right? So it becomes pretty easy as long as you get all your fingers to keep track of things. And even if you don't get these numbers exactly right, that's okay. You're still breathing at about an estimated 3 breaths a minute there. And that's a significant slowdown. It helps your body to just calm and settle. Basically, the mind, when it's breathing really rapidly or shallow and fast, not only is there all sorts of issues that happen in the actual gaseous exchange that's going on in your lungs and your alveoli. But on top of that, you're not getting rid of the carbon dioxide that can be building up in your body. And carbon dioxide is actually acidic in nature, and it can cause all sorts of problems if you have too much of it building up in your blood. On top of that, you have the tendency when you're breathing rapidly and fast, just like if you were participating in an athletic endeavor or really pushing your body, that heart rate's going to start to increase to help pump the blood. And then in addition to that, you're going to start to trigger more of a fight or flight type tendency or type response. So it's 6-4-10 breaths, and that brings you down to about 3 breaths per minute. 6-second inhale, 4-second pause, 10-second exhale. And then after about 9 of those, you're at about 3 minutes, at which point you begin 4 minutes of a mindfulness practice, and then another 3 minutes of a deep breathing practice. That 6-4-10 breath is what I recommend again, and then you're done. So let's talk about the mindfulness practice now. So the mindfulness practice is what I refer to a lot of my patients as visualizing the pain. And so by this, I mean, people will sometimes say that they have a sharp pain somewhere in their body or an emotional pain that they experience, some sort of emotional toxicity. And I started this originally just using it for the emotional aspect and found such great results. And occasionally I would practice this same thing when I was experiencing pain myself. And I started offering this to patients and I got really great feedback. So the process is to calmly sit if you can. Upright is great. Feet flat on the floor. You've just done your 3 minutes of deep breathing exercises using the 6-4-10 breaths. If those aren't comfortable for you, any other sort of slow, rhythmic, deep breathing practice that you may have already had. But I like the 6-4-10 because, again, that extra long exhalation with the 10 seconds helps really clear carbon dioxide. So then what you're going to do is just imagine you're scanning your body from head to toe and asking yourself, where is the pain? Where's the discomfort? Or if you're experiencing some sort of emotional unrest in your life, let's say you're experiencing a lot of anger right? You've been really grumpy recently, or someone just really pissed you off. You're just mad at life, whatever it may be. Ask yourself, where is the anger in your body? And at first you might say, where's the anger in my body? It's an emotion, but that's okay. What I want you to still do is just take a moment or two, scan your body, and just ask yourself to see where the anger might be, if the anger is in your body. If it's depression, where's the depression in your body? If you have physical pain, you might already assume you know where it is. But what we know from all sorts of different studies of pain patterns in people is sometimes, for example, if you have a headache, that headache might actually be coming from a pain or a knot or an area of what we call in Chinese medicine stagnant energy, or poor flow of qi and blood, through perhaps something in your back. Or we know with different referral patterns, there's many times someone might have foot pain and it's actually coming from something in their hip region or their lower back or their lumbar area. So don't just assume that because you feel a physical pain somewhere that that's what's going to show up when you do this. So just scan your body. If it helps to pretend that there's a beam of light coming down your body, like a plate glass of light, or actually to put your hands and to just slowly scan your body, asking, where is there something out of whack? Where is there some sort of stagnation or some sort of deficiency or some sort of imbalance that your brain is going to want to, or your mind is going to want to focus on? And so then odds are you're going to find something. And just ask, is this the anger that I've been dealing with? Is this where my body is storing or processing this anger? Because what we also know about emotions is there's frequently what some experts have referred to as a pain body, meaning somewhere in your body that emotional pain is being stored, or emotional, what we call in Chinese medicine, toxicity. So then what you do once you've come upon it, right? So let's say I'm feeling really angry, and as I'm coming down, I find that, oh, there's something going on in my throat. Or let's say, we've all had that lump in our throat experience when we've either been really angry or really sad. But let's say for this example that I find something off in my throat, and for whatever reason, as I'm scanning my body, I go, oh, I'm looking at anger. Yeah, that's where that anger is. That's where that stagnation is. Okay, so now, and this is where we get a little creative and bring back our imagination that we probably had when we were children, and hopefully we still have now. I want you to just ask yourself, without any judgment, what image comes to mind, okay? So if it helps, if no specific image comes to mind, and if there is one, it's okay, whatever it is. It doesn't have to make sense cognitively in a logical type way. So let's say you're really angry. Let's say there's an image that comes to mind, or maybe there's not. If there's not an image that comes to mind as you find that area in your throat, for this example, that anger is located at, ask yourself, is there a color to that emotional toxicity? Okay. Is there a shape to it? Is there a texture to it? Maybe it has a movement to it, or a rhythm, or a kind of sound to it. Right? So I've had people, when I've guided them through this before, I've asked, is there a color? Is there a shape? And they've said, no, but there's this sound of grinding metal. I'm like, okay, let's look at that sound of grinding metal. Some people are more auditory. Some people are more visual. Some people are more tactile. So it's okay to use any sense that you can apply to this. But very frequently it helps people to think of an image or a color or a shape or that type of thing. So for this example, let's say I'm scanning my body. I find this area. It feels like a bit of a lump in my throat. So lump, okay. It's hard like charcoal. It's really black, but the little bumps on it are green and really rough like sandpaper. All right. I'm just making this up as I go here. But if that's what you should happen to describe it as, what I want you then to do is ask yourself, is that toxic to you, or is that unhelpful to you? Which I would imagine, if that's what you were feeling in your throat, you'd say, yes, that's unpleasant, unhelpful, and I don't need it anymore. And if you have no place for that in your life anymore, what you can then do is just start to think of, okay, color, shape, movement, texture that's pleasant, that's healing perhaps, that you really do like and that you prefer to be there. And what you can then do is just using your imagination, using your mind here, just imagine for a moment that black, lumpy, hard and charcoal-like substance with the green, rough, sandpapery edges. Imagine that the whole thing turned to a pleasant color. So right now I'm just picturing yellow in my head as a pleasant color for whatever reason. Slightly translucent, so it's very delicate yellow, almost like you can see through it. Okay, now I've, in my head for a moment or two, started to transform the image of what's in my throat to a more pleasant one. Now I'm going to get rid of those bumps. I'm going to smooth it down and get rid of that sandpaper texture to it. So now instead of a really hard, rough, sandpapery, black and green substance of lumps in my throat, I'm just imagining it becoming a yellow, translucent light, like a glowing amber color, right? And it's cool and it's soothing now, right? And so this is what you're doing as you go through this process. Again, it might not be a lump in your throat. It might not be anger. Maybe it's physical pain in your shoulder. Maybe it's some sort of heartbreak that you've had. And you say heartbreak and you actually feel it in your sternum and you feel a winding or anxiety, and it's a winding tension and it's a burning charcoal and like the coils on a stovetop burner, right? And it just feels really unpleasant when you think of it. So then cool it down. Imagine it, instead of being red, hot, and winding, stop that winding motion. Just imagine the winding slowing down, imagining it starting to cool. And now instead of red, maybe it's a nice subtle blue. And instead of burning you, it's suddenly somehow a healing energy that you've transformed it to. And again, it can be a totally different thing, even if you've experienced anxiety every single day for the last 20 weeks and you try this method and you say, oh man, here's where the anxiety is. The next time you do it, maybe you find it somewhere else. Maybe you find it's in the same place every time. Okay. And so what can be really interesting is this can be started used as a preventative technique too then, because at some point you might start to, throughout the day, just be checking in with yourself, doing a different mindfulness technique and be like, oh, that sensation in my shoulder, I'm starting to feel it. I'm not feeling anxious, but I'm aware of that one spot where I always find the anxiety is in my shoulder there. So maybe you do a little bit of stretches and some work or some mindfulness practice to just observe that in the state that you're at and start to transform it ahead of time. So that's the basic technique in a nutshell for the mindfulness practice. At first, it might not make a lot of sense, but as you practice this, come back to this video, watch it a few times if that helps. As you practice this, it will become more and more natural. I mentioned earlier that you might find an image. I had one person reference a famous politician that they found, and it was someone who had passed away a long time ago. I can't quite remember, so I don't want to misspeak, but I think someone once mentioned Abraham Lincoln, that they found Abraham Lincoln in their jaw or something like that. I've had places before where I've done this in my life just as a meditative practice, just to kind of decompress, feeling a little off, not quite sure how, and I found a person, a face of a person. It made no sense to me, but for whatever reason, something about their energy or something about my energy was holding on to this image of them in my jaw at the time. And I hadn't been having jaw pain. I'd just been feeling a little bit off, not quite sure how. And so I did this exact technique and I saw that, and all I wanted to do in that case, because I felt a little bit disrespectful to transform that person, was I just said, okay, what I wanted to do is, for whatever reason, just bring in just a healing light and just imagine them being healed by that. So you can play around with this a little bit. There's no necessarily right or wrong way. There's no absolutes here. There's no best. This is us working with our mind as a mindfulness practice in order to understand what's going on in our body and our mind better. Again, there's times where I've worked with people who have had shoulder pain and they've done this, and sure enough, they find that the area is in their shoulder and it's a sharp metal pain and burning sensation to them. It's exactly how they might have described that pain when they first came in. I said, okay, what I want you to start doing is, on a regular basis, I want you to start working to actually transform this at home, right? And so I taught them this technique, and it's incredible how much benefit people can get from this. We know in different styles of meditation, it can help reduce physical pain. There's been plenty of studies with this. We know in different styles of meditation, it can help with cognitive behavioral issues, certainly with stress, can reduce GERD and acid reflux for people. There's all sorts of studies out there. It's really amazing to look at some of that data and some of that literature. And what's really interesting as well is many of these studies, and here's part of why I've chosen 10 minutes as a good goal. Many of these studies, as they've had participants in the studies going through training, sometimes it's very rigorous training, and sometimes they're asked to do meditative practices. Mindfulness-based stress reduction is frequently asked to be done for 45 minutes a day, up to 6 days a week. And most people just don't have that kind of time. So when they've been asked to do these studies and participate, they've also been frequently asked to keep journals. And in the journals, it turns out that people who are maybe being given a pain stimulus before they do these trainings for meditation, and then again afterwards, and they're asked to rate their pain and to see where their tolerance and their thresholds are, in their journals, it turns out that they don't tend to do 45 minutes every day, that the average in many of these studies have actually shown about 10 minutes a day. And yet the people who are doing the meditation versus the no intervention group seem to almost always improve in terms of their pain tolerance and threshold versus the no intervention group. So that's the people who do any meditation. Even if it's just 10 minutes a day that they actually admit to doing in their diaries or their journals, it seems to be very effective. So it's 3 minutes of 6-second inhale, a 4-second pause or hold of that breath, and then a nice drawn out 10-second exhale. At first, that might seem really hard to do. For a lot of people who aren't used to deep breathing, that might be difficult. It's okay if you shorten those lengths a little bit. It's okay if you feel like you're gasping for air after that 10 seconds of exhale, so you don't make it to 10. It's okay if you do box breathing, as I speak about in the other video, or just a rhythmic breathing of inhale and exhale. Focus on slowing the breath down. 3 minutes of slowed breathing, somewhat rhythmic. Try the 6-4-10 breaths. That makes it nice also, because then you say it's 9 breaths with 6-4-10 breaths. About 4 minutes of observing and transforming your pain with this mindfulness technique. Looking at the color, the shape, the movement, if there's a sound, any sort of sense you have with it, finding it in your body, asking yourself, how can you transform that with your mind? And then another 3 minutes or so of deep breathing that will help settle you down, help you to focus, help you to be drawn in. And again, I call this the TeMPR Method. It's 10 minutes for pain relief, and it works for physical pain very often. It works for emotional pain very often. It's not the be-all and end-all, right? If you've just been in a terrible accident and you have a really badly torn rotator cuff, this might take the edge off a little bit potentially, but it's not going to necessarily help with all pain. It's not going to necessarily help with all emotional conditions we go through, but it's a tool in your tool bag. It's not there to get rid of any other conventional care that you might need or benefit from, but it's there as just a tool in your tool bag that will cost you nothing but 10 minutes of your day to practice. And you might learn something about yourself and benefit a great deal from it in the long run. So that's a little tool for you. I hope it helps. Please give me feedback. Please leave some comments below. If you found this helpful, if you've practiced something similar, if this reminds you of it, feel free to share. This is about establishing a community and establishing greater health for everybody. So if you have other techniques that you've done that you really like, share that below. Try this out. Give me feedback. Let me know. You have anything interesting come up? One time I had someone say they couldn't continue to do this because in the middle of it, they just couldn't stop thinking about French fries. And I thought that was really enjoyable feedback. So they maybe this wasn't the best exercise to do on an empty stomach for that individual. So either way, now you're going to think about French fries when you try this. So I hope it helps. I hope you're doing very well wherever you're at. Namaste, peace, God bless, and subscribe, like below. Always a help. Take care and have a good day.